Hey everybody, welcome to another video with Five Horsemen, or what's us. Been a long time no see, fellas. How's it?
Howdy, boss.
Good to be back. Good to be back.
Good. Well, today in our video, we are going to be ranking the songs Van Halen 3. No, of course not. Of course not. We are going to be showing 5 albums that we bought based on the cover artwork alone. Never heard a note of music on it. We were in a record store, saw the record, thought, wow, that looks cool. Bought the record, and then did it suck or was it good? But obviously, if we've got a part of our collection, I'm sure the album was not bad. But so that's what our topic is going to be tonight. So happy to have all of you guys here. Missed you guys a lot. But we're going to start with Chris. He's to my right with your first album.
All right. Well, I have an album called Malice in Wonderland by Pace, Ashton, Lord. Now, I knew nothing about this record, but I went by the names Pace and Lord. Of course, Ian Pace and John Lord from Deep Purple. I didn't know Ashton, Tony Ashton. Maybe you guys can let me know. Did he sing for a band that I should know? I'm not sure. But I went by the name. I like the cover. I like the sort of the pun, Malice in Wonderland. And I was not disappointed. This is just great 70s bluesy rock with kind of an R&B edge to it as well. And so any fans of Deep Purple or any fans of just 70s rock in general, check out Pace, Ashton, Lord. This is just a killer record.
Cool.
It looks killer.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of them, but I don't really know that album. I've heard a couple tracks and it is really good.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think it really did much, commercially or like, selling records wise, but it's kind of a cool album in sort of the Deep Purple vein, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right. So my pick, I got this one because I started hearing the name once I got into the vinyl community. And so the first one I picked it up just because I thought this cover looked cool. I had no idea what it sounds like. And that's Demons and Wizards by Uriah Heep. I really like Uriah Heep now. I went on to get some of their other records, but this was the first one I got. And I basically I can't remember, Chris, I think you know, who does the cover art on those?
Roger Dean.
Yeah. Okay. Same guy who like does Gentle Giant and some of that stuff, I think.
Yep.
But anyways, you can kind of see that's, I like the whole fantasy aspect of that. It's got, kind of space looking stuff there on the back. And I just thought it looked cool. So I picked it up and it turned out to be a really good album. Uriah Heep. I mean, you guys know them, they're like a hard rock band with some kind of 60s sounding psychedelic in there. So I really like it. So that's mine.
Great.
Yeah, Uriah Heep is not talked about enough. They are a great band. They have a lot of killer records.
And it's crazy how long they've been
still
around.
recording. Yeah, they're still recording, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at Yourself is my favorite by them. I absolutely love that album, but that's a great one too. They're all really good. Really good.
Yeah, I actually like Look at Yourself better than this particular album, but I really like that album cover.
Yeah,
and I didn't know it at that point. I didn't know what they sounded like. So
Any album with Roger Dean artwork.
Yeah. You have The Magician's Birthday by them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a great album too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that album.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Aaron.
So this one's going to be kind of surprising. I like the hard rock, heavy metal, and back when this was out, I think it was. Let me look at the year here. 87. I had never heard of this band, and all these that I'm going to be showing, I originally bought on cassette. That's how I was buying them at that time. But I saw this cover and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. What is this? It looks like it's hard rock. And it was this, White Lion with Pride. And I'd never heard White Lion. And it was like right when it first came out. And I put it on, me and my friends were outside playing football, listening to it. And, you know, it started with Hungry and Lonely Nights. And by the time it got to Wait, we were like, what the hell? How is this band not known? None of us knew them. It was like 6 months before the video for Wait came out. So we were listening to this album for months and months before it got popular. And it was just really cool discovering this before it got popular. And I always remembered that summer listening to it. And just always loved this album. And I was totally astounded by the guitar player, Vito Bratta. He's one of the best hard rock metal guitarists that was going in the 80s.
Does that have the song When the Children Cry on it?
Yep, it's the last song, I believe. Yeah. And also Tell Me, All You Need Is Rock and Roll. You know, Wait was the biggest hit probably. But yeah, it's a really good album too. But I just thought it was a cool looking cover and it looked like it might be hard rock metal. I just called it metal back then. So I grabbed it and I was blown away instantly by it. I still love it. It's my second favorite album by them now.
Oh,
Tell Me is one of my favorite White Lion songs.
Yeah,
Tell
good one.
me, baby, all through I love that album. And it's funny, Aaron, because I discovered that band because of a girl brought the record in. And you know, people used to bring records to school back in the day. You know what I mean? Like you should go to your friends. And I saw her walk into, we'd go in the cafeteria before you went to your first class. And she walked in and I noticed her holding the record. And I walked up to her and I'm like, what is that? Because you're right. The cover is it's hard to miss. It's bright white with the, you know, and yeah, that's how I discovered that band.
Cool. Yeah.
Good choice.
yeah.
All right, my first blind buy was purchased this year, but it's an actual album from the 80s. So I still do blind buys. I try to go into Purchase Street Records. They have like a bin of obscure rock. And instead of taking out my phone and listening to it, a lot of times I just buy it based on the cover. And if this was a new album, this would be one of my favorite albums of the year, but it's not. And it's the front. And I looked at it like, this kind of looks kind of like the Doors or something. And I bought it. It was very cheap at Purchase Street Records. And I'm just blown away. It's like the Cult meets Danzig, meets alternative. It's just hard rock. It's great hard rock. And I just can't believe that this wasn't a huge album. Every single song is great on it. And if I ever find more copies, I will buy it for every one of you guys on this call because I love it, love it, love it. And I would tell you that if you've never heard it, L'Emotion would be the biggest hit they ever had. But I love every song, but the song Pain is my favorite. It's just awesome. So yeah, the front. And I don't think the album has a name. I just could just call it the front. So go get it.
Is that a young Chris Cornell on the cover?
What's that?
Is that a young Chris Cornell on the cover?
I know it's kind of.
I think it looks like Michael Hutchison.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. Uh-huh.
But I mean, if you guys saw this in the bin for cheap money, you'd probably take a stab at it, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Not mine.
cool.
Yeah, and that's an amazing album. And I'd never heard either amazing thing. I was really into that music and I was like, how did I miss this record? And you sent it to me. And, you know, if I would have discovered that on my own, I would have been in this list because it's an amazing record.
Chris has it on cassette.
Got it on
Awesome,
cassette.
Chris.
Yeah.
Killer.
Oh. All right, mine's a bit of an oddity. Probably none of you have heard of it before, but a cover like this, I could not resist it. I'm talking about Kung Pao.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if I was hungry and it was at the CD store or whatever, but I mean, my favorite tracks on here are probably General Tao's Chicken. Crab Rangoon is very cool. I like Sweet and Sour Chicken is pretty good. Chicken is okay. It's a little bit long. It's kind of prog rock a little bit. Egg Drop Soup is the album closer, but it's all right.
Dude, have you heard their song Pork Lo Mein? It's
No, I think that was a B-side, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, no, that's not. Anyway, this at record store day where I was at, they had this table set up where it was like all giveaways when you were leaving the store. And so I'm like, all right, I'll take it. It's free. But now it's just a running joke in my collection. So anyway, that's not the album I was going to show. The album I am going to show, now this is one back when, because when in the 80s, everything I bought was pretty much on cassette. I would buy some vinyl, but you know, I was in that stage where it was like the late 80s. And most of what I bought was on cassette, but I don't know if you can see that, the Sugar Cubes. And this is Life's Too Good. No idea who the Sugar Cubes were. This is obviously before Bjork had success with a solo artist, but I'm like, you know, I don't know what it was. I was just like, God, I love the pastels of the cover. Just something intrigued me about it. And I've since picked it up on CD, but it's kind of it's an anatomically correct kind of drawing, although the male figure has two penises. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, it had nothing to do with that on it. But as it turned out, I was like the coolest guy because nobody had ever heard of the Sugar Cubes before. And it's actually a great album. If you've never heard, you know, any pre-Bjork solo stuff, it's really, it's sort of like the Sugar Cubes are like the B-52s in a way. They're sort of Iceland's version of B-52s, because you've got a guy who's kind of like Fred Schneider who talks. He doesn't really sing, he talks. And you've got Bjork, who's kind of like the Kate Pearson of the group. But it's great melodic power pop. Sounds a little bit like REM in spots, but just real cool kind of late 80s alternative rock, I guess. But I was so happy I picked it up. I'm glad the cover kind of drew me in. And you know, it's an album that I still listen to today. And I am a bit of a Bjork fan, but you know, still I really like Sugar Cubes a lot. So that was mine.
Nice.
Awesome pick. And yeah, I do love the colors of it. And I love Bjork. I think she's awesome.
Yeah.
Chris, your next one.
All right. Well, sometimes we're lucky enough to come across an album that has a cool obi strip that tells you some information that kind of it makes a blind buy a little bit easier. This is a band called Gong. And what it says here on the obi, and this isn't a real obi. I don't know what you would call this because it's not really an obi strip, but it's like kind of like an obi strip. But it says the prog rock supergroup that features the complete historic Gong lineup. Now, I don't know exactly who the Gong lineup is, but any Gong fans out there, you know. But I was sort of, I was drawn to the colorful cover, and I was drawn to the fact that it was prog rock. I like a lot of prog. And, you know, bought the record and really, really dig it. It's sort of for fans of sort of jazzy prog rock and space rock, sort of like anybody who's into the band Hawkwind, you would dig Gong. So again, they're a prog band that never sort of made, you know, made the heights of a Yes or something like that, but they're sort of a little bit more, I don't know, they're a strange band, sort of kind of along the lines of a Gentle Giant, but you know, a strange prog band. So if you want to kind of expand your listening a little bit, I would check out this band.
What year was that album released?
70 something.
Because they had their own TV show back in the 70s.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
Chuck Barris, yeah.
Yeah, again, I forget the guitarist's name, but he went on to do some solo guitar work as well. But yeah, sort of a quirky prog band. But if you are sort of into that Gentle Giant Hawkwind sound, you might dig them.
Very cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So my next pick, I wasn't fully sure of the concept of what we were doing here. So this pick is one that I bought just because I wanted the cover. I didn't even really care about the music per se. Not that I don't like some of it, but it's like certain soundtracks like this. This is James Bond, From Russia with Love. And I love all those old James Bond movies with Sean Connery. You know, that's very 60s looking right there. And I just bought it for the cover. You know, I really don't care about the record that much. Now, there are a couple of, I have a few James Bond soundtracks. And I want to get all the ones with Sean Connery eventually. But I picked up the one of that, what's his name was in. Is it David Niven in Casino Royale, the first one? That's got a cool cover also, but that also has a lot of good music on it too. It's got Dusty Springfield on there. And, you know, some of these will have the title track song in there, you know, like Goldfinger, those songs that you know. And then they have a lot of that kind of cool guitar stuff going on. So they are, you know, they are kind of cool to listen to at times. But, you know, I just got it because of that cover. I mean, that's just cool.
Have you ever listened to it?
Yeah, I have. And like I said, you know, yeah, I've listened to it one time. I have listened to a couple of the other soundtracks a little bit more, but I've got one of them that I haven't listened to it at all.
It's probably pretty rare. I've never seen that soundtrack before. So
there was a store that had it seemed like when I would go there, every time I would go, there would be like another one there. I'd find another one. So I've got like 4 or 5 of them. Still working on it. Eventually, you know, they're usually, the Casino Royale was a little more expensive, but the rest of them are usually fairly cheap.
So Gary, in the early 2000s, there was a flea market down the street that nobody went to, but this one guy used to own a record store, and then obviously all record stores went out of business, and he opened up shop in this flea market. And he was a very sweet old man, and I used to go there every week until he eventually passed away. But if we could go back in time, he had thousands of vinyl soundtracks, some still sealed, some, you know, all in amazing condition. And he was giving these things away because nobody was collecting records. And I think about all the soundtracks. Like, I bought from him a sealed Back to the Future soundtrack for $1, that when I sold my collection, I sold it for $70, because at that point there weren't these reissues. You weren't seeing Back to the Future vinyl reissues. If you could go back in time, oh my God. But my one question for you is, so you're not going to get the 70s James Bond movies, or 80s, I should say, Roger Moore? You're just going to stick to the Sean Connery?
No, I mean, I have Moonraker.
Okay.
So that's the only one. And Moonraker, I bought that also because, I mean, yeah, I'll probably get to Roger Moore's. But Moonraker was the first movie that I remember going to see a James Bond movie with just my friends. Not on TV, but we walked downtown to the theater and saw it, you know, so it was kind of a big deal. And, you know, the movie's really corny. The Roger Moore James Bond movies are super corny,
Right.
but they're fun. And, you know, when you're 12, they're awesome. So,
Yeah, I think all teenage boys like James Bond movies.
oh, yeah.
So
cool. All right,
Right.
Aaron.
My next one came out in 1989. It was the same kind of deal. I just went in, found the cassette. I was like, I'd never heard it, grabbed it. And I know a few of you are big fans of this. It's the Hags.
Yeah.
It's an amazing record, and it blew me away from the first time I heard it. And I listened to it over and over, and I still listen to it a lot. And it was just so cool discovering this without even knowing who they were. I really love that kind of thing. And still, I don't ever, I'm not a kind of person that like will listen to something on my phone first. I like blind buying. I'm just, you know, if I don't like it, I'll just get rid of it. But I really like the blind buys. And this was one of my favorites I've ever had.
That's
nice.
an album. I love that record.
Cool cover.
Yeah,
I love
I
that
would.
record. And
I would
almost
totally
picked
buy
it.
that on a blind buy just by that cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
I almost
Even
showed
smaller
that today, but I was convinced either you or Chris were going to show that record. That's why I didn't show.
Well, I got it. So sorry, Chris.
Josh, you got your
That's
hand
okay.
raised?
What?
You got your hand raised.
Do I?
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Lower the hands.
Oh, now you moved.
Oh, you just switched positions.
Sorry, guys.
Gotta love Zoom. All right, sorry, Aaron, did you have anything more to say about Sea Hags?
That's just a great record. A killer sleaze metal, my favorite stuff. And it's just such a great cover. I mean, I couldn't pass it up when I saw it, and so happy that the music was as good or better than the artwork.
Now, what the, I hear the word sleaze metal a lot, but how would you define metal?
Well, they sing about girls a lot, and you know, that kind of thing. Just, you know, and there's sleaze metal is usually a little bit harder res than glam, like a little heavier, grittier guitars, and just more street sounding.
Mhm.
Not as polished.
So kind of like Guns N' Roses. Would Guns N' Roses be?
They're kind of sleaze metal, yeah.
Okay.
Rat.
Right.
Yeah. Sweet FA, you know, there's a bunch of them.
Gene loves Jezebel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depeche Mode, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
All
think
right,
sleaze
Josh.
metal- I was just gonna say, I think sleaze metal didn't try to appeal to the, you know, the glam, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it was very similar music. All right, so 10 years ago, this album was released. I had heard of the band, but I never heard their music. And their albums are always a color. So their first album was, they had like the red album, then they had the blue album, and then they released a double album, yellow and green. The lead singer of the band actually does all the cover artwork, and he's done covers for many, 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 many other artists. They're a fantastic metal band, and it's Baroness. And I want you to see this cover. This is the yellow and green double album. So I'd never heard their music, but I was like, I've got to hear this band. And no matter what, at least I got a cool cover. And I was blown away. John Baisley, the singer, does the art. It's just so epic. The album is incredible. This is their best album. On this tour, he almost died. They got in a horrific bus accident, and luckily he survived. But they thought, you know, that maybe he'd never be able to play again. But luckily he did, and they've released 2 albums since then. But this by far is their best album. If you want to go hear a song, if you've never heard it, I would say Eula is their masterpiece, which is on this. But this whole album is great. It's a double album. It's fantastic. Yellow and Green by Baroness. Their album covers normally have nudity, so I don't show them a lot, but this is a great one.
I love
I have
that
their
album.
gold. I have their gold and gray album,
Love that album too.
which is really good too.
Yep, that's a great one. That's probably my third favorite. I think that's my favorite. Purple's my second favorite. Then that one.
Yeah, you sent me the purple one. It's good.
Yeah,
It kind of
the
grew up.
purple. Yeah, the purple's the most straight up rock. I think Yellow and Green's a little bit more metal. Their first 2 albums are much more metal. But you know, I think that I like them better as a rock band than a straight up heavy metal band. I think I enjoy the rock elements that they're adding to their music. So
Do they have a male or female lead singer?
a male, but they just added a female guitarist. Yeah, the album that Chris has is with a girl guitarist. So when you see their photos, a lot of time the female guitarist is up front because the band is not very attractive.
I just saw the name like Baroness. I wasn't sure. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, when you sent it to me, it had all the women on the cover. I thought it was an all girl group at first, and then I looked into it. I was like, oh, okay, never mind. But it's
What do
good.
you think about his vocals? Do you like his vocals?
Yeah, it's sometimes it's a little bit new metal to me, and I'm not a big fan of that, but it's good. I like it. It's definitely grown on me a lot hearing it. So,
Awesome.
All right. Well, I'm surprised nobody's shown this album yet. Maybe you got it on your list, and I'm sorry if I'm taking this one for you. But the thing that drew me to this album cover was the band looks like superheroes. And when you're growing up, obviously, you know, at least for me, I was totally into comic books and you see this album and you're like, God, I gotta have this album, this band. Like they look like something right out of Marvel Comics. Talking about Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I remember seeing this and being like, God, I want chest hair. I want to be able to wear open shirts and totally. But
That's actually a pretty good album.
that's really nothing. Okay. So the album I'm going to show, I saw this and it was like, it looked very arty. And this music's got to be good, but it's like, I'm totally taking a chance on it. And it could have really, this album could have totally sucked, but it did not. And some of you might be like, yeah, it sucks, but no. I'm talking about Yaz, Upstairs at Eric's. I know I got this originally on cassette. I've got the cassette, but you know, it's hard to kind of show it on cassette, but I've got the vinyl on here. But this is Alison Moyet and Vince Clarke. Vince Clarke was a founding member of Depeche Mode. It's very much synth pop, but Alison Moyet has got such a voice on her, and it's just a really enjoyable. I think this album came out in like 82, maybe, but like everybody in college had this album. I bought it, never heard a note of music on it, but I'm like, God, with that cover like this, how can it be anything but cool? Actually, the band is called Yazoo in the UK for some reason. They just called it Yaz in North America. But this album's phenomenal. It's fantastic. It's got the song Situation, which actually they did a remix of in the early 90s to kind of make it more contemporary. It's got Only You, which is kind of the ballad on the album. Don't Go is fantastic. Goodbye 70s, but it's just a great, great synth pop album. Influenced a lot of bands. Vince Clarke would go on to form Erasure, but I mean, I don't know if anybody else has heard this album, but I think it's fantastic. I think it's great, and
Yeah, I have it on CD. It's a great album.
yeah.
How do you spell Moyet?
Moyet, I think.
I thought maybe it was a weird spelling. There's an artist, but I'm not the same one. So
Yeah.
There's a MoFi version of that album, Jeff. I got to find that for you one day.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love that. No, it's a great album. I mean, especially, you know, it's kind of like if you wanted to, you know, seem very pretentious to your friends, like, oh, let's stick a little Yaz on the cassette player or whatever, and it's like, oh, he knows who Yaz is. Ooh. I did not know.
No,
I thought
he
you
knows
were
who
just a
Gong is.
geeky, gangly, tall nerd, but no, I was not. Well, and probably, yeah, like, you know, I don't know. Anyway, in hindsight, I should have been listening to Judas Priest and Iron Maiden, shit like that. But, you know, I was out to, you know, get girls and stuff. And, you know, you pull this album out, it's like, ooh, where's the first bedroom? Can we get
Nothing drops the panties like
I
that.
know.
Yeah.
Ooh, you're way more attractive than you were 5 minutes ago. Anyway.
Now, meanwhile, Aaron was getting a lot of tail because he was listening to Wasp Fuck Like a Beast. So
Well, and he was a musician. I wasn't even a musician. I didn't even have that going for me. Yeah. I was just whatever. So anyway, story of my life. Sorry.
turn.
All right, moving right along. Chris.
My turn. Yay. Well, this next album, I was attracted to the balloons on the front cover.
Wow.
I love balloons. This is Rod McEwen, Concerto for Balloons. No, I'm just
God.
I'm kidding. Now
that's a
this,
totally different direction there.
this is a great album, by the way. This kind of goes along with what Gary was saying. Gary showed a soundtrack. Now, when I was at an outside yard sale, like a flea market sort of thing, and I was kind of going through these records, and I came across this cover. I'm like, what the hell is this? This is the soundtrack for a movie that came out in 1968 called Faces. So I don't know, I was attracted to the cover. I started reading the back and I noticed that all the songs were produced, conducted, and arranged by Tio Macero, who produces Miles Davis. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to check this out. Brought it home and blew me away. It's like a forgotten jazz record from like the late 60s, early 70s. Like I said, produced, conducted, arranged by Tio Macero. He worked with Miles Davis. So anybody who's into that sort of late 60s jazz sound, check out this soundtrack for Faces. And I've never seen the movie before, but the music is just phenomenal.
Well, anybody in Miles Davis's sphere can't be all bad.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it was a blind buy for me, but you know, I knew once I saw Tio Macero, and I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Is that a foreign film?
I don't know actually.
It looks like Gregory Peck on the cover.
No, it's an independently made American picture, it says.
Yeah, it looked like Gregory Peck behind the lady. I don't know if that's who it is, but
Richard Forrest, John Marley, Lynn Carlin. I don't know. So I've never seen the movie. I gotta try to watch this movie and check it out.
yeah.
But I mean, sometimes what's cool about blind buys is you can be totally surprised and go, holy shit, I would never have known about this record before.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that is an
I scared Josh away.
Yeah, Josh said, I'm not talking about soundtracks. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Okay, Josh, you're up next.
Josh,
That was kind of a creepy looking cover in a way. I almost could have used it on my last video.
I think you spooked Josh. Anyway, that's all right.
yeah, what the
I
hell?
think Josh is either going to show a Bruce Springsteen record or a Neil Young record, I think, next. Probably. We'll see.
All right, Gary, you're up.
All right. Well, mine, I actually, I don't know. I'm making a last minute. Now look, frick. Oh, Chris is back. I was like, what the hell?
No, I had to turn down the heat. I was cold before, and now I'm like burning up.
So I don't have this next one on album. All I have it on is cassette, and that's what I originally bought it on, was cassette. And this was kind of more along the line of what we're talking about here. This was a blind buy. I bought it solely on this album cover, which I got to show on my phone because I don't have the cassette up here with me. That's in the basement. I bought it solely on the album cover and the name. And that is Love by The Cult.
Yes.
I remember I went up to Findlay and I was going through the record store and just looking at like new releases, and oh yeah, there you go. And they had that there, and I just thought that sounded cool. They were called The Cult, but the album was called Love. And, you know, I just like that almost Indian looking, you know, whatever these wings are here and these symbols below there and stuff. Very, very simple. Almost had like a spooky kind of look to it. I really had no idea what it was. I didn't know if that was metal, you know, or what it was. And so I got in my car, you know, and I started playing it. And it's this hard psychedelic rock. And, you know, which, I mean, Electric is probably my favorite album by The Cult. But Love is my second favorite, and it was my first. And, you know, it was kind of like what you were saying, Jeff. You know, when I first bought this, yeah, that's what I got. I got that. When I first bought it, you know, my buddies, they didn't know what it was or anything. They're like, you know, what the hell is this? Has all that echo in there, and it's just such a cool sounding record. And at that time, I didn't think anybody quite sounded like that record, you know. I mean, it was hard rock with like this weird 60s kind of feel to it. And I just fell in love with it. And then I remember when Electric came out, and then everybody really liked that album. And I remember, you know, telling people, well, it's a lot different, you know, than their than their other album, but they're both great. I mean, I loved Electric, you know, I mean, it's fantastic, but Love is, that would probably be one that, I don't know, you can tell me, Josh, if is that out on vinyl on any kind of reissue?
Not on a reissue. It's hard to find, but I mean, it's been reissued before, but it's out of print now. But I love that album.
Yeah.
And Electric's hard to find too, which I own that. I love that one. And I love.
I do own Electric on vinyl. Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's kind of more along the lines, I think, of what you guys are talking about. That's why I had to show it on my phone.
Yeah.
So,
And
Yeah, I think
Gary,
it used to be called Southern Death Cult or something like that, and then they shortened their name for that one. But that's got She's Sanctuary on it, which is
yeah.
a club hit, actually. It's sort of, you know, as near to, you know, like a dance remix as they ever had. And then kind of with Electric, they definitely hardened their sound a little bit more. And then with Sonic Temple, they got even more into hard rock. But that's probably as close to like new wave an album as a cult would ever release.
Well, I think Rick Rubin did Electric, right? And probably changed their sound slightly. And then Bob Rock did Sonic Temple. So I think that they had different producers for every album.
I think Sonic Temple had a little bit of Love and Electric kind of mixed together, you know, because Electric was like super raw. Yeah,
Right.
it was so much different than Love. And then Sonic Temple was a little bit of a combination of them.
Yeah.
So was Ceremony, in a way, I think, their next one.
Yeah. Great choice.
Gary, you can't say Indian anymore, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Native American. Okay.
Yes.
I'll leave now. I don't know. Hey,
All right, Aaron.
Josh, wait a minute, Josh. How do you pronounce that beer?
What is it? Boston Lager?
Samuel Adams.
I thought when you said, I thought there was going to be a more heavy accent when you said Boston,
No.
Boston Lager or something. I don't know.
You know what the best Sam Adams holiday beer is? The Fezziwig Ale.
Nice.
I love that.
Yeah. It's good.
I work on not having that accent, you know.
I love that accent.
Thanks.
I think we should all start saying Bad Larry. Check this Bad Larry out.
I know. I want to sometimes, but I thought, then it looks like I'm just sucking up to Josh.
You can church it up and say Bad Lawrence. This is a Bad Lawrence right here.
Church it up. Listen to you. You can church it up.
We
We
have
can
our
all
own-
just go with rhymes with it. A different
What's
name
that?
that rhymes, Gary. But Gary's already there, so I don't. Yeah. Is it my turn?
Yes.
Okay. This next one here, I was visiting in Portland, Oregon when I was, let's see what year was 88, I think. So I was 18. Went down to the record store, Music Millennium. It was like 4 blocks from my grandma's house. And I used to go there like every day. And I remember seeing this cassette and I was like, this looks exactly like what I love. Brought it home and it totally blew me away. I'm still listening to it. I played it on one of my Tipsy Tuesdays. Rock Gang, things I've never done before. And I'm so happy to have discovered this. I never would have, I mean, I just saw the cassette and the green kind of stood out. And I was like, oh, what is that? Rock Gang, never heard of them. Went and bought it. And then I haven't stopped listening to it. Absolutely love this album. They have phenomenal guitarists, really different sound, another sleaze metal. These guys are from Florida and they're just, just look at them, but they rock hard. They're just really killer musicians. And it's really good. I love this album so much. And I believe I actually got Josh to even buy it.
Yeah, and I love it too. It's excellent, man. Great.
It gets better every time you hear it too. Just the guitar work on it, just they shred for this type of music. I mean, it's not like thrash, but you know, they just nonstop soloing almost, but it's melodic.
So I just want to say something. This is what I love about you guys. Let's think about what we've shown tonight. Like Jeff is showing Yaz. Aaron's showing freaking sleaze rock. I'm showing strange like prog rock. Gary's got some soundtracks going on. We've all got like this crazy stuff, which is cool. I just like all of our different musical influences.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting for Jack Pyle to make an appearance, but I don't know if that'll happen.
Yeah.
I love Jack Pyle.
Well, I was saying, Josh, I'm waiting for you to show like a Neil Young record or Bruce Springsteen, but I don't know.
Oh, there is something in there. I will tell you my favorite artist of all time was a blind buy, but I'm going to save that for last. Not my favorite band, my favorite artist. But my next one was bought in 1988. I had never heard one song off it. Bought it specifically not only on the front cover, but the back cover. I think it is one of the most underrated hard rock albums of all time. The second album of this band was their big seller. And even though I love the second album, it doesn't hold a candle, in my opinion, to the first album. The first album, every single song is fantastic. And that's LA Guns' first album. Look at this back photo. I mean, I chose this over Guns N' Roses. I hadn't heard a song on either album, Appetite for Destruction or LA Guns. And I was like, well, they both had cool album covers, you know, Guns N' Roses with the cross and this one with the shield. This one had epic hype, but this back cover was like, oh, these guys look like, they didn't look glam. They just looked, like Aaron says, like sleazy. And it's just fantastic. And I remember bringing it home. And whenever I brought home albums, my dad would say, let me see that. Take it out of my hand. He turns it around. And side 2, the first song is called Bitch Is Back. And he goes, at least they had good taste to cover Elton John, and handed it back to me. It's not, I'm just telling you. But yeah, it's a fantastic album. I love it. Every single song in this is awesome. And the crazy thing is the band always celebrates Cocked and Loaded. They did like a re-recording of it. They did a live album of it. But I really feel this album should get the better treatment. Roger from Perch Street Records is best friend or friends with Tracy Guns, and he's trying to convince them to do a box set of all of their early albums. So we'll hope that he convinces them to do that. So yeah, I'll keep you guys posted if it happens. But LA Guns' first album, it's awesome.
Love LA Guns.
I could have used that one too, and I totally agree. That's their best album.
What is and not to get off topic, but how is their new record? Because I want to hear that.
Oh, it's awesome. I love it. I heard it one time and I was like, this song's killer. This song's killer. It's not as heavy as that.
Yeah.
There are elements that are heavy. But it's excellent. I love it.
Sweet.
Well, their previous one, The Devil You Know, is pretty heavy. I love that album too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty.
Worth the money. I think it's only like $20-something, so it's not expensive.
I really need to get Hollywood Vampires.
Yeah, they're trying to, like I said, Roger's trying to get them to reissue all of those original ones.
That's not the name of What is the name of that? I
It
said
is
that right.
Hollywood Vampire.
Okay, yeah. Now you have
Hollywood
to
Vampire.
classes and yeah.
That's their third album. And then they did the Vicious Circle, and then they did their almost Pantera album. I forget what it's called, like something. Oh, it had like a gangster rapper on the cover. Like, I don't know what the name of it is, but Google LA Guns discography. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Man on the Moon's a good album too.
Yeah, Man on the Moon. Cool.
Great band. Killer choice there.
Thank you.
All right, well, continuing on in the same vein, this is kind of the godfather of sleaze metal. What?
Al Cooper.
What's so fucking funny?
I just never heard Godfather of sleaze metal.
Being
Here
totally
comes
serious
Thomas
here.
Dolby.
Yes.
What, I'm here to amuse you? What's so funny? So no, Godfather of sleaze metal. But I saw this cover and I'm like immediately like, ooh, I'm intrigued. And I've heard of the artist before, but I've never heard a note of music. But just based on the cover, Nick Drake, pink,
Yeah.
very sleazy, dirty, talks a lot about chicks getting laid, a lot about groupies and unprotected copulation and just, you know, drugs and stuff like that. But yeah, very cool, very like sludgy guitars. You can definitely tell there's a Black Sabbath influence, Deep Purple, Drake, if you've not heard him before, he's kind of like, if you like Ian Gillian, you'll like Nick Drake. But just very, kind of like bass heavy, a lot of distortion on the guitars. But yeah, just very cool. This was his last album before he overdosed on not heroin, but sleeping pills. But nonetheless, but actually the story behind this album is that he actually lived with his parents. He did very few live performances because he was very shy. And the record company was very surprised. He just showed up with the master tapes of this album and was like, here you go. And then he died very shortly after this. But Peter Buck is a very huge Nick Drake fan. I think Robert Smith from The Cure is a big Nick Drake fan. But in all seriousness, he's very much a singer-songwriter, but just had very unique guitar tunings. He didn't tune his guitar like normal people tune a guitar, and this is very much an acoustic-based album. It's the last album. He released 3 studio albums in his lifetime. This is the last one, and it's all purely acoustic. Most people have heard Pink Moon. I think it might have been on some TV commercials back in the 2000s or whatever. But very cool, very talented musician. But I actually, it's funny because when I bought this, I didn't know if he was still alive. I kind of associated him with, he's like Tom Waits or like that era. But no, this came out I think in 1973, and I think it was the same year that he passed away. But British singer-songwriter. I think he went to Cambridge with Pink Floyd, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway,
what a beautiful voice that man had too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could, when you told me you liked Elliott Smith, I just automatically assumed you liked Nick Drake. You know what I mean? Because their music's not alike, but you can see the similarities of they had a unique way of playing the acoustic guitar. They had beautiful voices,
Yeah, well, and Richard Thompson from Fairport Convention actually played guitar on his second album, Brighter Later.
Yeah.
I mean, he had street cred in the folk community back then, but he just never toured. He was very, he had kind of crippling shyness, did very few live performances, had depression, and just but very talented, great voice, just a brilliant guitar player, but not a whole lot of people. And I think that's kind of like Syd Barrett, where the timeline of his recorded output is very small, but he influenced so many people. He was so influential to a lot of, even today, a lot of people cite him as an influence, but there's not a whole lot of Nick Drake material out there, but the stuff that is out there is excellent.
Awesome.
Nice. Didn't Tracy Guns and Phil Lewis from LA Guns go to Cambridge?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Because Cambridge is known as sort of a sleaze rock school.
But I think didn't Richard Thompson play on that LA Guns album?
Yeah. He's uncredited though.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my next album, I was just thumbing some records. I come across this cover and I'm like, this is really cool. You got this shark hanging out underwater with this city that's falling apart. I'm like, I'm going to check out what this, I didn't know what Billy Talent was. I didn't know if it was a person or what. Come to find out, Billy Talent actually is a band. And this is their album from 2012 called Dead Silence. And when I got home, opened it up, such a cool inside cover too. And it's a triple gatefold.
Wow.
Wow.
And if you want to know what Billy Talent sounds like, they basically sound like Green Day. So anybody who's into Green Day, you would dig Billy Talent. There's sort of that pop punk sound. The vocalist sounds a lot like Green Day. And what's the Green Day singer again? I'm blanking.
Billy Joe.
Billy Joe Armstrong.
Joe, thank you. Yeah, so if you're into Green Day and you want something along those lines, check out Billy Talent.
Man, I love that album. Isn't it?
Billy
is it
Talent, I would have
album or
thought it was an
triple?
American Idol contestant, but
What'd you say, Josh?
when I hear the name Billy Talent, if you had shown that, being like, what do you think this is? I really would have thought it might have been an American Idol contestant or something, but
Yeah.
And I was asking, is it a double album or is it a?
Yeah, it's a double record. Yeah.
Oh,
I love that triple gatefold.
I know.
Yeah.
And that skull picture, that would have made a cool album cover. Just that picture of that skull right there.
Yeah.
That would have been really badass. And that's got like something from the Capitol. Yeah, very cool artwork.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and I have to listen to this more. I think it's just because and I don't have as many records as some of you guys do, but you just know, I mean, sometimes it's like, holy shit, I haven't listened to that record in forever. So I think it's time to put Billy Talent back on the turntable. It's good stuff.
Cool.
Nice.
It is an awesome looking album cover. Yeah, I don't know what made me pick up this, but that's not what I'm using. That's not what I'm using. I did buy it for the cover.
I don't blame you.
No, what I'm going to pick, this is a really old record of mine. I've shown this before for other things because one of my all-time favorite records, and that would be Rush, Farewell to Kings. I didn't know Rush when I bought this album. I was just getting into rock and stuff. So, all these bands were all new to me at that time. And, I'd heard the name Rush, people talking about it. I had saw the 2112 album cover and everything. But I went into the store and, this was under new releases. And I saw that cover and I don't know. I just thought the fact that it, the destroyed building, you got the newer buildings, in Canada in the background there. You got this king, this puppet on that throne there. And I don't know. I just found that very intriguing. The title, Farewell to Kings, kind of made me think of the Hobbit or something. And so because we were reading The Hobbit at the time. And I grabbed it and started listening to it. And I fell in love with it. I mean, even though I was pretty young for this type of music, I just thought it was amazing. I'd never heard anything like it. I still love it. I still love everything on this album. This is just so good. And this is obviously one of my better blind buys was this. I hadn't heard anything off of it. I had no, at that time, Closer to the Heart was released as a single off of this album eventually, but at this point I hadn't even heard that yet. So I had no idea what Geddy Lee sounded like. Neil Peart, any of them. I didn't know what it was. So quite the surprise.
Awesome.
That's my favorite Rush album.
Yeah, Xanadu is one of my favorite Rush songs, actually. I think that is one of the best
yeah.
we put out.
Those songs are just burned into my head. I love them, but I'm not sick of them. I can still listen to that album. Aaron.
Oh, maybe the coolest pick we've had yet so far.
So we're gonna challenge Aaron not to show a sleaze rock album. Let's see.
I don't know if I can do it. Please rock though. It's a little different, but that's what those were all my blind buys were. Most of the other stuff, like Motley Crue, stuff I heard that. Most of the stuff when they had videos, I knew them before I would buy them because I was watching the videos. So most of these are more obscure bands, and those tend to be the sleaze rock ones. White Lion isn't sleaze rock, so I showed one that wasn't.
That's true.
So this one really isn't either. But this one, I saw the cover, and I thought it was maybe the Cult type thing or something. But it was this here, Horse London. And this is a very obscure band from London. And they only had this EP. It was the only thing they ever did. And this is more of like just a biker rock metal, really heavy, not sleaze rock. It's just like, I mean, it's really heavy, but not like thrash heavy, more like Motorhead type. And I was really surprised when I heard this. A couple of my friends were like, what is this garbage? They hated the singer, but I kept playing it and I turned them around on it. They ended up liking it too. And I played this to death when I first got it. And yeah, this is a total blind buy. I had no idea who they were. And I still love this record to this day. No, even it's only 6 songs. That's all he ever did. And
The back cover looks like Motley Crue's Girls, Girls, Girls.
a little bit. Yeah, the marquee.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
But this is before that, I believe. This is what year is this? I can't even see the year on it. Somewhere in there. It might have been after Motley Crue, after Girls, 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 actually. It's possible. It was in the late 80s. But, I saw this cover and that's just, just had to get it.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Cool. So they
It's
said
a cult album cover.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is something not sleaze metal though. It's heavier than that. It's like Motorhead style.
nice.
Yeah, I own
I like the cover.
Awesome.
It's more like Depeche Mode.
It's not like Depeche Mode.
Yeah. Actually, my videos too.
Well, I'm sure Aaron's last album is going to be Boz Skaggs.
I don't mind. I like him. I like some of his songs.
I'm waiting for somebody to show Montrose Jump on it.
Yeah.
They bought it for that cover. But,
Yeah, that's a unique album cover right there.
This was actually really hard for me because most of these bands that I buy, I know beforehand. So I was just trying to find just strictly blind buys.
yeah,
So,
it is hard.
Yeah.
Is
So, okay.
anyone going to show Scorpion's Virgin Killer?
I
No.
hope not.
So, hopefully it's the US cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my next album I bought in the 90s, but it's an album from the 70s. So the 90s for me were, I feel like, the biggest exploration for music in the sense that I was trying to find something new. I was always searching for something new. It's when I got into jazz, I got more into the blues, I got more into Frank Sinatra, Depeche Mode. A lot of these bands that I might had dismissed in the 80s or not listened to. And it's probably slightly because I was slightly disenchanted with the music that was being pushed down our throats in the 90s. Some of it I loved. I loved Nirvana, Pearl Jam, but some of it I really didn't like. So I worked at Circuit City and they had a giant, it was the size of a record store, music section. And everybody knew I was obsessed with Bruce Springsteen, but this one guy, John, said, you cannot leave until you buy an album by this artist. I know you love Springsteen. You're going to love this artist. And it turned out to be my favorite artist of all artists, and that's Tom Waits. And I chose it. Look how depressed he looks on here. It's called Blue Valentine. But then on the back, he's leaned up against Ricky Lee Jones against a all disheveled car. And it just made me think of Thunder Road, by Bruce Springsteen. Bruce Springsteen paints this picture of being kind of down and out and having this rusty old car, but he pulls up and he's like, take a chance with me. So I was like, oh, well, if someone thinks I'm going to love this guy, love Springsteen, I'm going to get this. And the album kicks off with Somewhere from West Side Story. And 90% of my friends asked me to shut it off 3 notes in to Somewhere. So as soon as he's like, there's a place for us, they're like, what the fuck is this? They're like, if you don't put Slayer in 13 minutes, 30 seconds, we're leaving. But I friggin' loved it. And it's got a song, A Christmas Card from a Hooker from Minneapolis. And it's, that song is, the whole album kills. But Red Shoes, By the Drugstore, Romeo is Bleeding. He paints these pictures, this shady, seedy underworld. He's such a great lyricist. Some people can't get past his vocals, but I love it. I just absolutely love it. So best blind buy ever. I own almost every single Tom Waits vinyl. I have every piece of music he's recorded in terms of on CD, but I'm almost completed his vinyl record collection. just some are out of my price range. There you go.
Is it
Tom
fair to
Waits.
say Tom Waits sounds like Christian Bale's Batman?
Even worse. Yeah, even worse. Michelle's like, "Oh, play me some Tom Waits because you love him so much." It didn't take her long to realize this was not for her.
In a way,
What's that?
he's kind of the godfather of death metal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was going to say, if anybody wants to get into Tom Waits and you're not really into those later vocals, his first couple albums, he has a normal singing
Yep.
voice.
Yeah, like the Heart of Saturday Night.
Yep.
So like a decent
Yeah.
Tom Waits, but
Tom Waits tells this story that when he was a kid, he went and saw Lightning Hopkins, and he tried to sneak backstage. And on the door where Lightning Hopkins' dressing room, it said, "Keep out, performers only." And he goes, that's what inspired him to become a musician, was just that he wanted to be behind that door with Lightning Hopkins. And it's like such a fantastic story for someone that, like you said, the first couple of albums, he had a very distinct voice. It was definitely more commercial, but I don't think necessarily it was what he desired to sound like. Awesome.
Now, isn't that Tom Waits in the Bram Stoker's Dracula?
Yeah,
Like
he's been in many
Renfield?
movies. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, he's super talented. I mean, like, he's an incredible lyricist. Like, there's not too many lyricists I feel that, his lyrics are just so, I can't even describe them. They're so great. But they're complex too. Like, his early songs were very easy to decipher. His later songs, he tells these stories, but it's just the complex style they use his words. Is amazing. Not simple. Like, his earlier songs were a little bit more simple. His later songs are definitely more layered.
Cool.
all right. Well, the next one I'm going to show might be one of my favorite album covers of all. It's just so fun. And it's an artist from one of my favorite bands, and they broke up and he went solo. But this album, I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, this is hilarious. And yet it's so, this person, I'm talking about David Byrne. And this is his album Feelings. And what you have here is he's created like a David Byrne doll of himself, like a G.I. Joe action figure. It's just like so funny, and he's got like different expressions for this David Byrne's album. It's called Feelings. And it's just like so, I don't know. It's like if you were to like animate it like Toy Story or something like that, David Byrne. And like even the inside of like the CD, it's got like, spin, like the CD, it's got like an arrow on it. It's almost like some sort of weird board game thing. And then you can pick like which emotion, for David, but it's just like fun artwork, and especially like in the CD age, you didn't see that a whole lot where you got real creative and inventive with album packaging. But, if this album had sucked, like I still would want to own it because I think it's just so funny, like the whole David Byrne as a, doll or whatever. But the album does not suck. The album is actually really good, really cool. And there's nothing on here that anybody would recognize, but definitely if you like the Talking Heads and if you've heard anything else by David Byrne, but this album is so cool. Love it. And especially for the cover, I think it's just a riot.
They should have it should have come with an action figure with Kung Fu Grip.
Oh, I know. Like I would,
yeah.
I don't know if it's ever had a vinyl release, but have like a little, actual Barbie doll, doll type, David Byrne action figure with it. But it's just, you can tell it's like his sense of humor, and I don't know. I thought that was awesome.
That's awesome.
Cool. Well, this next artist, I was drawn to the cover, and she seemed just like a real edgy sort of performer, and it's Anne Murray. And it's her album Christmas Wishes. Got the hype, JC.
Yeah,
Is it
that's what
sleaze
was
metal?
so big.
I actually bought.
Yes.
Oh, nice, Gary. Nice.
Wow.
Call
Gary's
me
got it
Aaron.
right there. Yeah.
She is the
Wow,
queen of sleaze.
That's pretty impressive when you can whip out the Anne Murray album that fast.
I'm trying to compete with Aaron. You know, I'm surprised he didn't do that too.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I love Anne Murray, but that was not a blind buy. It's hard to see the cover, but this is a band called the Mountain Goats.
Mm.
I was flipping through albums at Barnes and Noble. Yes, I shop at Barnes and Noble sometimes. Their records have actually gone down in price, but I came across the Mountain Goats. I'm like, all right, this is kind of interesting. And then I started looking at the titles on the back. The strangest title. One song is called The Destruction of the Kola Super Deep Borehole Tower. There's another song called Lizard Suit. There's another song called To the Headless Horseman. This was a cool title too. The Slow Parts on Death Metal Albums. And I was like, all right.
That's
Just
awesome.
from the titles, I gotta check these guys out.
Do they have a song called Could I Have This Dance?
Yeah, they do actually. But come to find out, they're like an indie pop band. I mean, they mix a lot of different styles. They're kind of quirky, maybe like a little bit of They Might Be Giants in their sound as well.
That looks like an
I don't know
Echo
if
on the
you-
Bunnymen cover.
Yeah, so if you're into like sort of alternative indie pop, kind of mixing different styles of music, you have to be a little bit open-minded though. The Mountain Goats are a cool band. I guess when they first started recording, they were really like lo-fi, and they've gotten, their recordings are a lot more involved now, but definitely a cool band. They have quite a few albums out. I've come across their other albums and I've almost picked them up and I haven't, but I definitely am going to add more Mountain Goats to the collection. So, yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Cool.
I love that song title. The soft part of death
Slow
metal.
parts of Death
The
Metal.
slow parts of death metal.
And it sounds nothing like you would think it would sound, you know.
Oh,
Great.
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I
Well,
was going to show Bang, and then I figured I wouldn't show that. And I was going to show Green River, but
That's a good one.
That's good.
well, I don't have some of these, hip picks like Chris and Jeff, but when you're 15 and you see this next album on the shelf, it piques your interest, and that would be British Steel. I know this is like not a surprise type thing, but at this point, it seems crazy now because, you think of the songs on here, how much they've been played and everything. But when I saw this, at this particular time, I didn't know who Judas Priest was. Like when I saw the album, I thought it might be like a punk rock album, actually, because the way it looks, you can see he's got like some kind of bracelet on here. He got the razor blade thing going. But the name Judas Priest intrigued me, and I bought that. And I actually got it on 8-track though. When I first got it, I didn't have it on record. I had to get this later. But I mean, I love that album cover. I still think that's awesome. And this is not my favorite Judas Priest album, but I still love it. And it definitely turned me into a fan of Judas Priest. I love the sound of this record too. I think it sounds pretty cool. It's at that time it had kind of a clean sound to it for being that heavy. The drums sound really crystal clear on it and everything. Just a great album. It's one that I just bought because I thought it looked super cool. And at that time, it's not like I could buy an album every week or something. This was lawnmower money here. And so the fact that this was a blind buy that I bought, I took a chance on it and it worked out. So this was a great blind buy for me.
I've got a question. I don't remember because it's been a long time, but when you bought that on 8-track, when you first buy an 8-track, does it start right at the beginning, or because they're kind of weird how the tracks are on there? Do you remember that at all?
Like, are you saying is it?
Does it start right at the beginning of the album?
Are you saying is it in the same order as this? Or
No, I mean
yeah.
like when you're playing 8-track and they get into the middle of the, it's like you never know where it's going to be, kind of thing. You just switch the tracks. But when you bought those, would it always start right at the first song, right at the beginning? Like when you first buy an 8-track?
Yes. Yeah, brand new.
Yeah.
And you first play it. Yes, it did start right at the beginning. Yeah.
Because that would have been weird to hear like from the middle on. I was just thinking, that just popped in my head for some reason.
Yeah, it took me a minute to figure out what you were talking about. No, it always started at the beginning on the first track. Yeah.
Cool.
Let's all go by 8-track players.
What's that?
I said, let's all go by 8-track players.
I've got one, but I got to hit it up.
I don't have one anymore. He still got the Anne Marie.
I just love how you pulled that right out. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I played it when we were putting up the Christmas tree there a week or two ago, or whatever it was.
I saw that and it reminded me of that album Jeff showed a video when he was buying those really cheap records and there was the lady with the bed. I don't know why that reminded me of that. When you're net, you know what I'm talking about? You remember that?
I know. I still remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what that Anne Murray record
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do remember what you were talking about now. Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah, you haven't done that for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I haven't been in the 25-cent bins
Yeah.
for a long time.
Those were really good videos too.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I may have to do some more crate digging in the cheap.
Yeah, you'd always talk about the history of, what were they thinking? Where's this guy now? Just
Jackpot.
Well, my next one here, I just bought about a half a year ago. Never heard of this band, but I really thought the cover was cool. Didn't know what kind of music it was. And it turns out to be like a sludgy stoner metal. And I was like, oh yeah, I like this. And it was this here. It's like, I had no idea what this was. There's the cover. But I saw that cover and I was like, is that like Pink Floyd or, something to that effect? But it's this doomy, sludgy stoner metal. It's called Torch or Torch. I don't know, with an E. There's the band name. But I really like this. I ended up buying another album by them. And it's got these crazy song titles too. That's why I was thinking Pink Floyd. If you look at those, can you see that? It starts with a Charge of the Brown Recluse. It's just weird. Holy Roar. Yeah. But this is really good stuff. If you like, that kind of music. And it's not like Caius. It's more sludgy. Just real sludge. Heavy as hell. Really good album. I really like this.
Is this something newer? Or?
Yeah, it's from I think it's just like a year or two old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But I wasn't expecting like sludgy stoner metal out of this cover. But
no.
Yeah, that's why. There's the inside.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then
Ooh, that's a cool cover.
yeah, and there's the band on the inner sleeve. But yeah, it surprised me how much I liked it. Kind of a cool vinyl on it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a total blind buy. Never heard of the band. I still have never heard of them except for these records. They're not like all over the place. So I got away from the sleaze metal for you.
There you go.
Nice. All right. My number one was a band that existed from 1977 to 1983. So only 6 years. I knew of the name and the logo, but I never heard them. I actually purchased it in the courtyard of my school. Back in the 80s, kids, you could actually smoke at school. I didn't smoke, but a lot of kids did. So I hung out in the courtyard with them. And one kid had bought the cassette because of Cliff Burton's tattoo and said, I can't stand this shit. It sounds like a mix of Elvis and the Doors. And I was like, I want it. And the music, the early music is influenced by the Ramones. I feel like obviously the Ramones were contemporary at that time. But the Ramones, Elvis, the Doors, they're later were more influenced by Black Sabbath and hardcore elements of the time. That is the Misfits. This was the first one I've ever purchased. It's a collection of their singles. The songs are super fast. Their average song is under 2 minutes. Elvis-like vocals. Sometimes Jim Morrison-like vocals. I could never part with this album. I just absolutely love this album. I think they're the most underrated punk band of all time. Mostly because in the 90s they reformed and it became more like a merchandising thing where they're merchandising this skull and selling Misfits panties. And Glenn Danzig wasn't at the band at that time. And Misfits, water coolers and all this kind of crazy stuff. So I think that kind of diminished their legacy. But most bands will cite the, modern metal bands or punk rock bands will cite the Misfits as an influence. Bands like My Chemical Romance and AFI, and they all cite this band as an influence. They just think they're fantastic. So definitely one of my favorite bands of all time. Definitely in the top 5. I think they are super underrated punk rock band. Super, super, super. Are they as good as the Ramones? Obviously, the Ramones created this genre of music, even though the Sex Pistols came first. I think, the Ramones are probably the most influential American punk rock band. But to me, this is a close second. I know you love Black Flag, Chris, and they're amazing. And I would say Black Flag is my number 3. I don't know, maybe the Minutemen, but this is my number 2. I'm sticking with it. The Misfits. There you go.
Yeah, the Misfits are amazing. And you had mentioned AFI. AFI covers the song Halloween.
They do.
Yep. Yeah.
And Jeff owns the Misfits, which I'm proud to say.
Like that band, you should check out Sam Hain.
Yes.
Like the Misfits.
I agree.
They were heavily influenced by the Misfits, came out shortly after the Misfits did, or a band called Danzig as well. Those are the two that when I think of the Misfits, Sam Hain and Danzig are the 2 bands that really, I think were heavily influenced by them and sound a lot like the Misfits, actually.
Yeah, I would say the singer ripped them off.
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely, borrowed some Elvis, borrowed some of the Doors, borrowed some Misfits, but yeah, I think you're right there.
I mean,
and again,
I wasn't expecting the Elvis. When you hear a song like American Nightmare, you're like, whoa. Like, they just were a horse of a different color. It would have been so easy for them, like, to just go down a certain road, and they didn't. They just kept changing and evolving. So,
well, I found out about the Misfits through Metallica, their Garage Days album. Yeah, so thank you to Metallica, because I wouldn't have known who Budgie was. I wouldn't have known who the Misfits were, probably, or Diamond Head, yeah. Who sings the Small Hours? I can't remember the band name. But
oh my God, it's tip my tongue. I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah, but the Small Hours, that's a great song. But yeah, thank you to Metallica. I wouldn't have known about those bands.
Killer choice there.
All right, so we're down to the last one. Now, this is a band I had heard of. They had a song on the radio from the early 90s that was called Creep, which I knew of, but it wasn't enough to compel me to go out and buy any of their music. And then when I was at a record store and I saw this CD, it was like, you know what, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to buy something by them. And I'm talking about OK Computer, I'm talking about Radiohead, and damn, best blind buy that I've ever purchased. This album is a masterpiece. My favorite album of the 1990s, and there's so many that you could choose from, but for me, this one, it's got elements of progressive rock. It reminds me of Pink Floyd. It's got alternative elements to it, but it's a concept record, which I'm a sucker for. But this album, I'd never heard, I mean, apart from probably the song Creep or Fake Plastic Trees. Those are maybe the only songs I'd ever heard by Radiohead to that point. And ever since then, I've been a huge Radiohead fan, have all their albums, still think they're brilliant. But yeah, I best blind buy, like I say, that I've ever purchased. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. And I mean, there's no way to overstate how great an album this is. And I think it's the best thing they've ever done. I don't think they'll ever do better than this, but yeah, just a fantastic record.
I can never, ever get sick of that album. And the song No Alarm, No Surprises, every time I hear it, it's like hearing it for the first time, where I'm like, I get that feeling. I love when I listen to a record for the first time and there's a song that really affects me, and I think Mr. Hall of Fame mentioned this today in his meeting, that his record collection is his diary. It's his story of his life. And every once in a while, a certain song will hit me, and I'm just like, I can't get that song out of my head. It represents everything I was going through at that moment. And No Alarms, No Surprises does that for me. I love the whole album, but you're absolutely right. That's one of those albums I couldn't imagine not having in my collection.
Yeah, well, Paranoid Android, it reminds me a lot of like Yes, circa Close to the Edge. It's different movements, it's melodic. I mean, it makes the hair stand up on my arms, certain parts of that song. It's just incredible. The fact that came out in the 1990s, it's not grungy, it's just its own genre, actually. And I think that they've always, since that time, Kid A was a totally different. I mean, with the exception of, Kid A, with the exception of, I'm trying to think what the song was off of there, but I don't know. Anyway, but it was just a bold move and even a separate direction. I mean, they could have tried to replicate OK Computer, but they didn't. What's the song?
Was it Enjoy the Silence?
Optimistic from Kid A was the song I was thinking of. That's probably the nearest thing to a Kid A or in a OK Computer sounding song, but the rest of it is just so often left field. And I think with each album, they've kind of like pushed their boundaries, and they're experimenting in the same way that the Beatles and the Beach Boys, were expanding their sound in the mid 1960s. They're like, well, we're not going to try and make the same album twice. They're always trying to explore new soundscapes and found sounds and do something different with their songwriting, which I think is admirable. But it's just, you never knew what you were going to get with the next Radiohead album. And I think that's what I loved about it. It didn't sound like anything else that you heard on the radio. It was sort of like I don't know. I really don't know how to define it, but Radiohead is just one of those unique bands that keeps pushing the boundaries.
I totally agree. And I think that the strange thing is this. So you think about the first album and then the Bends, which the Bends was a commercial success. And, them and Oasis and Blur were like, well, here's the new British invasion. And Blur and Oasis went on to tried to replicate the success of their sophomore album, where Radiohead said, no, we're going to go in a completely different direction. If you think about if Pink Floyd had started off with Dark Side of the Moon and then went more avant-garde, and then, you know what I mean? Like, that's what Radiohead did. Radiohead started off as a big band and then said, no, now we're going to go and be more progressive. And now we're going to add electronic elements. It's so brave. And it's hard to believe they were successful with it, if you think about it, because you would have thought that they would have felt the pressure from the record company to conform and to make a rock record. And they did make a rock record, but unlike any other rock record that was out in the 90s. And it's just a masterpiece, Jeff. You're absolutely right. It's a stone cold masterpiece.
Yeah. All right. Well,
you silenced.
Speechless.
Yeah, I mean, you ended with a bang, man. But that wasn't a blind buy for me. I'll be honest. I was highly.
Yeah. Well, it was one of those, I mean, I'd heard Radiohead is great. Radiohead's cool. I'm like, okay, well, we'll see.
Have you seen them in
Album
concert?
cover. Yeah.
Yeah.
And from there, it was like, I never looked back. But
Did you guys ever hear this album before?
I love that album.
I've seen the cartoon.
my favorite Christmas album of all time, next to Nat King Cole's The Christmas Song.
Nice.
It was kind of a joke, but you know.
No, I love that album.
Chris.
Oh, really?
And I
No,
love that.
Led Zeppelin 4 was a blind buy.
I wish I could tell you all the albums I discovered just flipping through my dad's collection. It was kind of like a blind buy because I stole it from him, you know what I mean? Brought it upstairs to my room. But Led Zeppelin, Kiss, all those bands I discovered through flipping through his collection, you know, so, but I don't think they really count. So,
I did the same thing.
yeah. You know, Simon and Garfunkel. It was just like,
Yeah.
well, this looks interesting. This will be my album tonight, you know?
The Moody Blues fall into that category for me because I remember seeing their covers and putting the records on. I had never heard the Moody Blues before, but that's how I kind of got into them, by just looking at their covers.
Yeah.
Yeah, certain bands that like and I would agree, going through my dad's collection, like Jethro Tull's Too Old to Rock and Roll, Too Young to Die was one of them. You know, he had like Elton John, Captain Fantastic. I mean, talk about a feast for the eyes. Looking at that album artwork with the booklets that came with it, was incredible. You know, Let It Bleed by the Rolling Stones. He had, looking at that, like, oh my God, this is so cool. He had Exile on Main Street, you know, which had a whole, you know, gatefold and the album packaging and all of that.
Sergeant Pepper. I mean, just
Yeah.
the cover of Sergeant Pepper. I remember staring at that thing. You know, obviously I knew the music because my dad played the Beatles every weekend of every year of my life. But you know, not that was a bad thing, but staring at that cover,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
mean, my
show-
dad had $1 Billion Babies by Alice Cooper, and I remember thinking, like, what the hell is this? This is
With the big bill.
yeah,
Remember
yeah,
that?
exactly. It
That.
was like a billfold, and you're like that creepy doll or whatever. It's like, what in the hell is that? But
The one I remember, like Oliver, just staring at that cover and just
Oh yeah.
hours and hours.
I'm going to show a cover, and I know Josh has this record, but
Yeah.
check that out. Miles Davis live, you know, Live Evil. Just some cool covers, man. You just want to listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Love-
what the hell does this sound like?
Yeah. The first Black Sabbath. I
Yeah.
remember seeing that cover. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Any Iron Maiden cover.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
good.
Oh, yeah.
None of them were blind buys, or I would have shown one of them for sure.
Oh yeah.
Live After Death, first one I heard. Well, not the first, but that was the one that really stood out the cover to me.
Yeah.
I could do this on hype stickers. I've bought albums for hype.
I can believe it.
Yeah. I still do.
Well, it was
I'm
kind of
told.
hard in the 80s because, you know, you'd see a
Videos.
band, they'd have a video out. So to find a record that you've never even seen the video or anything, you know, that's kind of hard. I was having a hard time trying to think of some of these, like, you know, did I actually know about like one song or what? But
Well, my mother banned MTV for a while there, Gary, because she saw the California Girls video by David Lee Roth, and she thought it was the most sexist thing she's ever seen. And then
And
she
it-
woke up one time in the middle of the night, turned on HBO, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High were on, and she thought it was a porno. We're lucky we didn't lose cable forever. But my mother's like a very religious woman. It was bad. Yeah.
all right, well, thank you, gentlemen. Been a delight.
thank you.
Happy to have all of you here again. This may be our last episode before the holidays. I'm not sure, but anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Adios.
See ya.
See you.